is here, our TxDOT field rep.
Uh, Philip, we can see that you're muted. Thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate that so much. Glad you're on board today.
My pleasure, Judge.
And Ms. Cantrell, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll close agenda item 4 and we'll move to item 5, which is the approval of our minutes from our December 15th, 2020 meeting. If you've had a chance to review those, if anybody has any questions or additions to that, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd make that motion, Judge.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pope. I have a second by Mr. Atkinson to approve the minutes of the Transportation Policy Committee on December 15, 2020 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye or hold up a finger.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Item 6 is to hold a virtual public meeting to receive comments regarding changes to the proposed roadway projects in the fiscal year 21 through 24 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, in order to satisfy financial constraint. Before we open this to public comments, I want to turn this over to Mr. Jones, if you'll explain a little bit about what this meeting is about.
Thanks,
Public hearing is
Judge.
about.
As I wrote in your backup, this public meeting is required to help TxDOT satisfy their public involvement initiative regarding the restart of the 21-24 STIP process. This is our 4th of 4 advertised meetings that meet TxDOT's new timeline to get their STIP approved. You have a copy of that notice of opportunity to comment in your backup, and that notice also satisfies the online or virtual nature of the opportunity to comment. I think it's important to the task at hand to let you know that the Facebook live video meeting that we performed yielded 25 viewers or 25 likes and was shared 12 times throughout that Facebook community. As to what our initiatives or changes involved, be advised that we added segments 3A and 3B of Loop 88 from Chicago out to Avenue U to TxDOT Connect and to the eSTIP portal, which were necessary additions to ensure the flow of funding. Basically, that's the data input portion of the project development process that must be completed in order to make the TxDOT process complete, functional, and accountable. We had already planned to do that in September, but because of the STIP being determined as not in compliance, the commission canceled the November quarterly revision, which the call for projects was in September, but they canceled that revision process, which was the opportunity we were going to take to input all of our data. So this is the first opportunity we have with this restart, if you will, of that STIP process to put everything in and get all of our projects up to speed. Likewise, we added project data to TxDOT Connect and to the eSTIP portal for the bridge at FM 41 and US 87. You have a tip map in your backup that you can locate that project. Then at TxDOT's request, we will remove NPO 40-7B, which is a segment of Woodrow Road, from the 21-24 TIP map only, since the construction of that segment, that particular segment, has not been funded yet. TxDOT views this project as a group project, and they wanted us to take it off the map. It's a group project, meaning that its data, which is already in TxDOT Connect and the eStip portal, will remain in the system and maintain its funding eligibility. It's just grouped statewide with other like projects where the main funding criteria was, in this case, preliminary or design engineering. So we just take it off the map, and then when we fund the construction, then it'll go back on the map. Lastly, we moved phase 3C of Loop 88 from Avenue U to US 87, along with 4023 and 4063. That's the intersection redesign at US 84 and Loop 289 in the vicinity of Martin Luther King Boulevard, out of the 21-24 let window, moved it out to 2025, still in the 10-year plan, and we did that to help TxDOT meet their fiscal constraint for the 21-24 TIP. So basically, the takeaway here is our additions and changes were merely data entry, the data entry part of the process to turn the money switch on. No other changes were made. So, Judge, that being said, unless there's somebody that wants to speak to those issues, that's all the presentation that I have for the public meeting.
Is there anyone from the public who wished to make a comment on the proposed TIP or SIP changes that were proposed? Mr. Jones, I know there was an opportunity for the public to have input in person this past, Thursday?
Yes.
Was there anybody that showed up at the MPO office
No, sir,
to make comment?
nobody showed up.
All right, thank you.
I would re-emphasize though, as I said a minute ago, when we did our Facebook meeting, we did have 25 likes. So in other words, somebody was receiving that message.
Okay, good.
And it was shared 12 times.
All right. Is there anyone to speak on, for, or against the changes to the proposed roadway projects in fiscal year 21 to 24 of the TIP program? Hearing none, I will close this public meeting. Thank you all very much. Now we'll move to item 7. Well, I guess before we move to item 7, is there any comment that we can have from the policy committee? Anybody wish to make any comment before we close and move to agenda item 7 from the policy committee? Okay, let's move to item 7, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding the goals and objectives for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update to 2045. Mr. Jones.
You'll recall from our last conversation about our goals and performance measures, you were generally greatly supportive, except that you wanted to add something separate about extending I-27 because of its importance not only to the community, but also to the region. So following the city of Lubbock's lead on their legislative support program, I added one additional objective and 2 supporting strategies to each to goal number 2 and goal number 6. Those additions are in your backup and they are noted in red. And I think those additions satisfy your directive. On goal number 2, which is on page 20, I believe, in your backup, we want to support the designation of US 87 South from Lubbock as the continuation of Interstate 27 with appropriate design standards and funding as a mobility and reliability issue. And then for goal number 6, which is on, I think, your page 22, we want to help or assist designating I-27 both north and south from its current limits to support continued growth throughout the state, to enhance safety, freight movement, and interstate trade as a matter of tourism and economic development. So I trust you'll find these additions appropriate and to your satisfaction. And absent any questions, I would ask your support for your advisory committee's recommendation to approve.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Atkinson?
Thank you, sir. David, I appreciate how you've added these, and I like the wording. I work for the government, and sometimes that means we specialize in the Department of Redundancy. But nonetheless, I think the teams that have worked on this continually have pounded message number one is that this helps safety. The
Yeah.
I-27 project helps safety. And generally in that same set of key points, we talk about freight. The whole concept of the ports to plains corridor and, south to north and largest inland port. Would it be possible to put, it may be not quite as lengthy, but to put a simple statement in 1 and 3 that speaks directly to the designation of US 87 south from Lubbock, south and north, as a continuation of I-27 supports the safety of the network, something like that to number 1. And then number 3, just target it at freight and freight mobility.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Mr. Atkinson, are you asking to just add an objective to goal number 1 that would be safety centered on the extension of I-27, the ports to plains, or support of the ports to plains initiative as an initiative of safety? Is that right?
So I-27 as safety in goal number 1.
And then I-27 is freight in goal number 3.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I can do that.
Are there any other comments to the goals and performance measures of Imagine Mobility 2045?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
on goal number 2 on page 21 in our agenda backup, there's objective number 4 that relates to coordinate congestion management activities, including air quality. It also brings up MPO members and stakeholders to identify tools and solutions for the Lubbock metro area roadway network. The city of Lubbock recently had we have not approved it yet, but had been brought forth from Texas Tech University, a neat project that I think might be advantageous. And I'd like to, actually Mr. Atkinson because he knows it better than I do, to address this possible coordinated effort with that objective.
Certainly. So Texas Tech University, and at the moment, this is primarily coming out of their weather and climate group, has approached the city of Lubbock to put in what they call an array of things, AOT, array of things. This is a grant proposal that Tech is submitting that would install something in the neighborhood of 155 devices that would fit at various intersections throughout the city. Initially, they're going to set them to do things such as vehicular traffic count and pedestrian traffic count, while at the same time taking their various atmospheric readings. Ideally, what they're trying to show is when it's raining, what happens? When it's snowing, what happens if it's too if it's too cold, do the pedestrian pathways change? Those devices, those AOT devices, have the ability to do air quality monitoring. And apparently that's an onboard feature that as tech enters into a research phase that requires that measurement, they can take in any of our common environmental metrics, a lot of which you would see more commonly down in the non-attainment zones. So, Mr. Griffith, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you very much. I just felt like you could explain it better than I could.
Thank you. Also, Ms. Walker, let the record also reflect that Mayor Wright has now joined the meeting. So thank you. Good to see you, Mike.
I've been here a long time. It wouldn't let me in or wouldn't show me. So I've been here since the start.
Well, good to see you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I guess based on Mr. Atkinson's recommendations to add, I don't know if we can certainly entertain a motion to accept with those changes to goal 1 and to goal 3. Or we can wait till the next meeting and see what Mr. Jones comes up with and see if it's language that we would accept. Up to the committee.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion if the board is willing, subject to those 2 changes. Mr. Jones did an excellent job of wording in what we had asked on those others, and I have a comfort with that.
I'll second.
I will second that motion.
Mr. Warren, did you second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Griffith.
Mr. Atkinson has made a motion to accept the objectives to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update to 2045 with the changes that were addressed earlier in goal number 1 and goal number 3 to add the I-27 corridor, the Ports to Plains extension into both of those goals. This motion was seconded by Mr. Warren. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye or hold up a finger.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Atkinson.
Thank you.
I like these goals. I think they're really easy. And as Councilman Griffith pointed out, we're already doing things that fit within the goals. So
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And as we move forward, we'll make sure that any agenda item that we're working on will certainly fit within our goals, because I think that's very important that we have a blueprint that we look back on, an operating plan, as it were, to make sure that we're constantly moving forward with the goals of the MPO. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8 is the reports. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. The report on page 25 in your backup is a summary of the year-end funding bill that was signed into law in December. Most importantly, for us anyway, is that it provides the remainder of TxDOT's funding for 2021 for the planning process, for the MPO process. Then on page 27 is a notice of enforcement discretion from FTA. FTA actually asked us to share this with the policy committee. That says for the second time, FTA will not take any enforcement action regarding transit safety performance targets until July 21st, 2021. the takeaway here is that this board will act on those targets. So it's important to know that you don't have to do that now till July 21st. And Mr. Mandrell is probably grinning back there. But we'll bring all that back to you at that time. Then on page 29 is a reminder that at our December Tempo meeting, we were having a discussion regarding the aspect of resiliency in our long-range planning efforts. We were reminded by our federal colleagues on that call that resiliency now is a federal requirement pursuant to the FAST Act. The FHWA defines resiliency as the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions and withstand, respond to, and recover from disruptions. FHWA rules and regulations now require all state DOTs and all MPOs to consider resiliency in the transportation planning process and in all state DOT asset management plans. The takeaway here is that since this was a surprise to all of us, we need to go back now and reevaluate our decision lens project selection criteria and make sure we have a resiliency criterion there that is measurable, and we will certainly keep you in that loop as we do that. Moving on, the next report on page 30 is United Airlines has publicly pledged to be 100% operationally green by 2050 by reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 100%. They previously in 2018 announced that they would reduce those emissions by 50% by 2050. The plan they have now, the way they plan to achieve their new goal of carbon neutrality is by committing to a multi-million-dollar investment in revolutionary atmospheric carbon capture technology known as direct air capture with additional use of sustainable fuels. Direct air capture is a technology that somehow captures CO2 and then it's physically stored underground. And then the sustainable fuel aspect is simply biofuel that they're making and using now. They just plan to use more of it. So it'll be interesting.
So they're gonna grab carbon out of the air, bring it back to the ground, and then store it underground?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think that'd be a good opportunity at an upcoming meeting for Mr. Jones to go into some detail about that. Mr.
Yeah.
Ward, don't you think that would be quite stimulating for this group?
Yeah, I think I would think, Mr. Mayor, that the city would want to get in on the storage contracts for that. Where we're going to store carbon
I'll
from
take
some our underground wells and stuff.
monitoring that.
Sorry, Mayor, I dozed off during the presentation.
Yeah, well,
Back on track. On page,
Just trying to make sure you're awake.
on page 33 is a report about the Texas legislature will consider a coastal defense network to protect the Galveston Bay and the Port of Houston from storm surge at an estimated cost of $26 billion. I thought that might make interesting reading. The next report, which doesn't have any backup, is just to let you know that our conversation from the last meeting about what action to take to meet TxDOT's request to fiscally constrain our 2-year let window, 21 and 22, and move those projects around. Well, we know now we've got a little more room to maneuver than what we thought we had originally. And so we are convening a work group within our TAC committee and try to get our arms around that a little more solidly and bring you back a better response later. And then last is our financial report, which is on page 36. It's through November or the 16th percentile. We are showing 20% collected on our revenue at this point and 10% spent on expenses. So we're in good shape there. And Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
I just have one question. It's not really part of your report or anything. The effort to hire another FTE. Where
We have received several applications. One day last week, Tammy looked and we had like over, I think it was 500 or 700 hits on our ads. We have several applications in hand that have been screened by the city of Lubbock. I haven't yet received anything from my Tempo ad yet, but I'll wait a little bit and we'll get further into the review process.
Okay. Just keep us periodically updated.
Yes,
Mr. Jones.
absolutely.
Because I know the calendar's flipping pretty fast, and so I want to make sure we get we get this person on board. Thank you very
Yes, sir.
much.
Understood.
Does anybody on the committee have a question as to Mr. Jones on any of his reports? Mr. Warren, did the coffee kick in time? Are you good?
I can't seem to figure out how to unmute this damn thing. Yeah, I'm raring to go now.
Okay. All right. Is there anything further to the Transportation Policy Committee?
I appreciate everybody's attendance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you all. All right. If there's no other business with the MPO, we are dismissed. Thank you.